And we've had people come here and they've just been amazing people, but they've decided that it's not for them. It's too remote, it's too far away, and that drive to Albury-Wodonga is a difficult drive. If you had, say, grandchildren that you wanted to see every weekend, and you were doing that, and you're elderly.
I'm Faye, and this is Conversations with Faye. Today, to come from much more. Let's find out what's going on. I'm going to put on the old Conversations with Faye, changing lives, one conversation at a time. Welcome. I'm Faye Waterman, and this is Conversations with Faye. And my guest today is Deborah Culhane, who is a lawyer and been in the law for over 22 years, almost 23 years. And her law firm is called, what, Deborah?
I'm Country Life Law.
Country Life Law. Now, Deb, it is a pleasure to have you here because what we're going to be talking about today is sea change and tree change and the importance of understanding what it actually means, particularly for people who have retired and want to move from where they've lived for 30 or 40 years, and then they've decided that they've been to a place and visited it, but they want to move there. What do they need to think about and do when they're thinking about that sea change or tree change?
I think it's important also first to recognise that so many people are doing their tree change and sea change, and it's moved beyond the people who were initially doing the change to retire. Now we're seeing so many young people, because with property prices in the market the way it is, a lot of regional areas are able to offer much better lifestyle than what they can have in the city, and they get more bang for their buck, really. So we're seeing there's so many towns, and some of these towns have traditionally been not your tourist towns, not your big event towns, but some of these towns have been a little bit out of the way. So today we're here in the town of Corryong, which is where my high country office is. And Corryong is famous for the Man from Snowy River. Does anyone like to hear that poem?
Yes, it's a good poem, actually.
And we have one major event here, which is the Man from Snowy River Festival. But after that, we're an ordinary little town with a small hospital. But we're getting more and more young people coming into our town because of the property prices.
Yes.
But they are bringing such a vibrancy to the town. A lot of country towns, when they're a little bit remote, can be a little bit staid.
Right.
And they can fall into certain patterns and they can become a little bit less attractive. But now, with young people moving in with new ideas, towns that were once off the map are starting to regenerate, and it's having such an amazing effect on the people who live here, the people who are coming in, the people who are coming through. Our town's just been through, well, it's still going through, a revitalisation of our streetscape, and it's almost done.
Almost. How long does it take it?
A lot longer than what we were promised. But it's going to be beautiful, and it's just added such a great vibe to the town. And we wouldn't have had that without new blood and new people coming through. And it's so amazing to see the young families, and we see many more children in the street now, which means that we're getting better schools, better childcare. So a lot of these towns are really looking for people to come in and join them, because once when people came into a town, it took a long time for them to assimilate. Now people are much more welcoming, and it makes the transition so much easier.
And I think, I've been to Corryong a couple of times, and it's absolutely a beautiful town. So when these people make this sea change or tree change, we'll talk about the tree change first, which is the country areas. What is it that they actually look for besides the price of the houses for the younger ones? But if they're older and they've retired, what sort of things do they look for in a place to settle down after they've lived somewhere, raised their children, worked and done all that sort of stuff? What is it that they actually look for?
First and foremost, when we're talking about retiring people, they want really good access to healthcare.
Yes.
And some places have that, some places don't. We're very lucky here. We've got a very small but a lovely hospital. The other thing they want is accessibility. So there's no good going to a town where everything is up on the top of the hill or down at the bottom. So here we've got nice flat, straight street, quite easy to live if you're on a walker and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Younger people might have different needs. Also, too, the older people are looking for activities that they can engage in. So they'll be looking for the bowls club, the beautiful golf courses, and all of those things. And lots of country towns have lots of these facilities, and they're easy to get to. Membership's relatively cheap, and that's where they make friends. So when they're looking for something that fits with what they do.
Also, you said fits with making friends and meeting people.
That's important.
It's the social side of things where people, when they move to a place and they don't know anyone, it's really important for them not to isolate themselves.
And that can happen sometimes when they're new and suddenly the gloss is worn off, everything's unpacked, and suddenly they're in a house and they don't know anybody.
And
they don't know
reality
their neighbours, and then reality sets in.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that if they can get into activities that they like to do, and then they start to make friends, because in order for you to be happy, you have to have that sense of place. It's not enough to have services and clubs. You have to have a sense of place. You have to feel like you fit in, feel welcome. But that requires quite a bit of effort on your part as well.
Yeah.
You can't expect people to come beating down your door. You've got to make the effort
to go out and meet people.
Absolutely. And also too, we're seeing a lot more older people who are single. And that's when it becomes absolutely crucial that they are able to establish strong networks and friendships. And not every tree change or seed change does work out. We do see people for whom it doesn't work and then they go back. But often they've had a good experience and they now know people somewhere and they'll come back and visit, even if it's not somewhere that they decide to live. Generally, we find that, particularly with older people, when they come to a town, they've got grandchildren somewhere else, and they often feel like they're now too far away from the grandchildren. And unless it's an easy place for grandchildren to come, then sometimes they do miss that family connection. And some towns have got really good rail links, for example, and some it might be easy for them, but in this particular town, there's no rail.
There's no rail. Talk about the implications, Deb, of if someone picks up their life and moves to somewhere, and then they decide that it really isn't the place for them. What do they need to do prior to moving to make sure it's the right place for them?
What people used to do is that they used to go to places and they would rent. And they would test the water, see how easy it was to make friends. Do they really like golf as much as they think they're going to? Or croquet. But now it's not that easy, because rent, even in rural areas, is really difficult to get. And it's very competitive. So we have a lot of issues up here with getting people to rent, because we need doctors and nurses and they need houses to rent, and so do the teachers, and it's a real shortage of rental accommodation. It's not as easy as what it used to be. I do suggest to people when they come in to me and say, we're thinking of moving here, it's really great, we've just been to the festival and we haven't been before, but we think it sounds really great. And you say, well, sit down for a minute
and let's have a conversation
about that. And I ask them what sort of things that they would like. Well, how would they like their life to look like if they moved into a rural area? And sometimes I might say to them, well, there's another town just up the road and I think that might suit you better. Or I might say, I think you'd be better off in a much larger regional centre. So let's have a look at some of these places. That might be Ballarat or Wangaratta or even Albury-Wodonga. Or they might prefer somewhere up the road like Tumbarumba, because that's on the New South Wales side. And unfortunately, that border does matter. But unfortunately, as we found out during COVID,
yes,
it
does.
It does make a difference. So it's a matter of talking to people, and then I want them to, before they come back, all excited with a picture of a pretty property in their hand. I like them to spend time in the area, even if it's just getting an Airbnb maybe for a couple of weeks and really getting a feel for a place. Do they like the local pub? Does it serve the sort of food they like? Is there enough variety? Some of the people that come here find that we don't have enough variety. We've got a number of cafes and they're very good, but that might not be enough for them. They might say, well, there's no real special place, or the food at the pub is kind of very pub food because it basically caters to
Pub people.
the pub people and the farmers and the farm hands and all of those.
Yep.
They like that.
But there are other, cafes and restaurants around that if you want a little bit more upmarket, they're there for you as well.
And there are other towns which are really well known, like Beechworth, for example, well known for its cafes and beautiful historic buildings.
Yeah.
But this town is not that.
No.
So it's a matter of working through with people what they want their sea change or their tree change to look like. Some people like walking. Well, there's no point in going out rural on 5 acres if you like to walk down and get your morning coffee.
Yes.
And your newspaper. And sometimes it's not the big things, it's not the festivals and the events, it's the day-to-day things that make a place home.
It's the realities, isn't it? Once you get over that shiny, oh, this is great sort of thing, reality sets in, and is it actually the place for you to be?
And it's very difficult talking to people sometimes about what their expectations might be of a place, because when they come to me, they've got stars in their eyes, they've got a picture of a brochure in their hand from the local real estate agent, and it's just a matter of really working through with them and saying, well, because every town has an undercurrent. There's what you see. It's the day-to-day life that will make a difference in the end. And we've had people come here and they've just been amazing people, but they've decided that it's not for them. It's too remote, it's too far away, and that drive to Wodonga is a difficult drive. If you had, say, grandchildren that you wanted to see every weekend, and you were doing that and you're elderly.
It's really important that they have a conversation with someone like you, Deborah, because in reality, you're going to save them time, upset, finances, and all those things in between that to find the place that they actually really want to settle and be happy.
And they're all different.
They're all different.
Very different.
Yeah. You've got to do your homework. It's really important to have that conversation, isn't it, Ted?
It is, but it's a matter of talking to the right person as well.
That's right.
And it's not just me, but the agents. The agents in any town know that town really well. They're usually long-time residents, and they will quickly be able to say, this is not going to be for you, or oh, we've got another property, it's coming on the market, we think that might suit you better. Would you like an introduction? So there's lots of people to talk to. Talk to the people in the cafes. Talk to the waitresses.
Yeah.
We've got lovely waitresses here.
You have actually.
Yeah. And they're friendly. And if the waitress isn't friendly, well, that might tell you something about the town.
So what else is there that we need to be aware of with that sea change and tree change?
So when we moved from Melbourne, we went to Albury because we knew that we would want to travel to other places, and having the airport 5 or 10 minutes away was great. If we lived here, it would be much more difficult to travel to other places. And we are not towers. Doing the caravan thing would never work for us. But we like to sail, so we like to go somewhere where there's water as well. So I love working up here and I love being up here, but it wouldn't suit us.
But you travel up here 3 days a week out of 5, working here, supporting the community. What sort of things do you help and support people with in this community?
Mainly it's buying and selling property and people coming in, people going. And we're also seeing a lot of the farmers, particularly elderly farmers who are doing their farm succession plan. They're thinking, well, I don't want to live on the property anymore and I need to be out of my son and daughter-in-law's way so that they can manage the farm how they want to, even though it's a real wrench for them. So they're the ones coming into town.
Right.
And it's really great then because they've got established networks, established friendships, and life is a lot easier for them.
But moving from that big space into a smaller space, how do they find it sometimes?
They find it very difficult. One farmer said to me, he said, I look out my window and I see the mountain and I see the trees. And I said, oh, is that much different from what looking out the window at your beautiful farming property with all these amazing dairy pastures? And he said, no, every time I looked out the window at home, he'd say, all I saw were things that needed fixing and problems. He said, and I could never relax. He said, I'd wake up in the morning, look out the window, oh, the fence needs fixing. What's that cow done over there? Oh, there's something over there I haven't attended to yet. He said, now I wake up and I look out the window and I go, oh.
And how good is that? So then they can actually start relaxing and living the life that they deserve to live. Because of all the years of hard work, they need to take advantage of that and have the benefits of waking up in the morning and walking to the cafe to have a coffee, or walking up to the newsagents and getting their paper and having a conversation with the person behind the counter.
Surprisingly enough, because I thought some of them might struggle with that, they take to it like ducks to water.
Because they're familiar with the surroundings, but then they can also go back to the farm and see what their children or their siblings or whomever's managing the farm to see how it's going, or give them a hand if they need a hand.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. The farmers who've retired, they'll go out and they'll help fence or they'll cut wood, and it makes them feel like they're still part of.
Yeah, they're useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not so much that they've left a home and a property, the land is who they are. They're absolutely identified. And when you take a farmer off his farm and he says, I'm no longer a farmer, he doesn't know who he is. And it's the same for a lady's been in dairy farming for 60 years and suddenly I'm not a farmer anymore, I'm nothing. And everyone in the town will still see them as the
farmers.
Yeah. But unfortunately, they might not see themselves that way anymore. So being able to keep them in their own community is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And we also see a bit of that too in aged care. Because when people go into aged care, if they go into a facility where they know other people, they actually manage so much better. They don't get the depression, they don't seem to have the difficulty managing, even if they've got like dementia or Alzheimer's. They tend to listen to the nurses because the nurse might be the friend of one of their granddaughters.
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely lovely. I do find that sometimes when children have moved away and they say, oh, Mum, we're going to put you in a facility close to home so we can come and visit you. Then they're in a whole different environment. They don't know anyone, and it's very difficult to make meaningful connections at that age. And it's absolutely really sad, and it can be quite cruel. I know with my own grandmother, my mum and dad took her into a facility in her very much later years, and mum and dad did live in the country, but my grandmother hadn't grown up in that community, and all of the people in that facility, they were all apple farmers, and they were sitting around talking about the apples and what the weather today might be doing to the trees. But my grandmother could never be part of that conversation because she had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't relate to the stories, and they were amazing people. They had lots of great stories, but she was always on the outer on her own, and it was just really sad.
What else is there? What other things do you do besides support the communities? Because you do come up here. It's a beautiful place for you to come and work. And then you also have an office down in Wodonga. People can visit you there as well. But what is it that's drawn you to this place to support the people up here?
My father-in-law was a policeman up here during the snowy scheme, and he told such amazing stories, hilarious stories about what it was like, because this town is quiet now, but it used to be a bustling metropolis with people from all sorts of cultures and all ages, particularly after the war. And he was a young copper. The stories that he used to tell about how they dealt with situations, it was great. So we used to come up here with my husband and his family and to visit them, and also to the festivals. Many years later, I took a position on the board up here for the hospital, and I was on the hospital board for about 6 years. I just loved coming up here, and it just sort of spiraled from there. An office became available, so I was asked if I would start up, because I was very careful to make sure that the practitioner here, was welcoming, because I wouldn't ever want to
step on anyone's toes.
Yeah, which would have been unfair since he's been here for about 40 years. Yeah, so I've just absolutely loved it. And one of the things about country towns is helping them to maintain their business services. I'm quite passionate about this, but we see so many country towns failing and dying, and empty offices and empty shops.
None here.
Oh, actually, there's one.
There's one.
Because it means that people don't have access to the services and things that they want. And also, too, if you want people to come to a town, it has to be vibrant. It's got to be attractive to bring new people and old people to want to come to the town and to want to live here. And towns can spiral downwards very, very quickly. So I'm very keen to make sure that we keep services and retail in country towns. And we're seeing a lot of particularly old businesses that have been run by families, and they're trying to hand on, but they don't have anyone to hand on that business to. What I would like to see more of is people, or young people in particular, being offered vendor finance deals to take over these well-established businesses. They've got good cash flow, they're strong, their poor old proprietor has had enough and wants to go and needs to go, and to have someone young to hand that over to, they would much prefer that, and to have a vendor finance deal where they got so much money every month is a much better option for them than trying to hold out for $500,000.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who live in the city who have a bit of a naive view of what life in the country might be like.
Yeah.
It's not always quiet. They buy this nice little house and suddenly they're kept awake all night by mooing cows.
Talk about that, because that's a really interesting thing, that you move somewhere and it's supposedly quiet, and then across the road you've got a farm.
Farms are not quiet. It's not always the idyllic thing that people think.
Before they actually move, so that they understand the consequences.
They can be dire if someone makes a mistake and they've sold a house in Sydney or Melbourne and moved here. To be able to retrace their steps is costly and difficult. So it's so important. But in the end, people have got to be a little bit courageous.
Yes.
They've got to
take a risk.
And they've got to say, okay, I'm doing it. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll figure something out. On the first flush of excitement when you move to a new place, and you're all excited about it, but you get maybe a few knockbacks. Maybe someone isn't nice to you, or maybe something happens, or maybe your neighbours, dog keeps you awake all night or something. So. And you can quickly spiral down, but the thing is, you've got to be resilient, and you've got to keep an open mind, keep the conversations open, keep making yourself go to the supermarket, keep talking to people, keep doing activities.
And it's important to get involved in the activities that are around, so that you get to know people. Now, what else would you say, Deb, about sea change and tree change? Some things that we haven't maybe talked about. 3 tips for what they need to really think about.
The most important thing to think about is, as we've been talking, make sure that the town has the social things that you need, but it's all of the other stuff that makes life possible. Think about day-to-day living that really do make a difference.
Anything else that they need to know?
Big thing in country towns, can I get my car serviced locally, or do I have to drive a car that has a problem for 2 hours to get someone to look at that problem?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Deb, for all this wonderful information, and I think it's valuable information for people who want to move to a tree change. Whether you're younger or whether you're older, there are a lot of things that you need to consider.
If one place doesn't suit you, there will be somewhere else that will.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of finding it and doing your research.
Lots of thought there, I'm Faye, and this has been Conversations with Faye. And thank you very much, Deb, for your insights and your wisdom and your expertise. We'll be back next week with another conversation. It's bye from me for now. Subscribe button on our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Changing lives, one conversation at a time.